A store-bought coffee liqueur? No way. Make your own here on Bean Basics. Oh, hey there. Welcome to Bean Basics with Bob and Michelle. Welcome to sunny Saugatuck and welcome to our home and kitchen. Hey, listen, today we're talking about coffee liqueur. I was completely inspired. Somebody gave me a coffee liqueur that they made with BIGGBY Coffee. I'm like, that's amazing. And I began to compare what he gave me to some of the name brands. And I tried a little Kahlua. I'm going to try a little bit of it right now. I thought, yuck, that tastes like coffee syrup. So I went on a mission. And when you go on a mission to find something out, where do you go? You go to YouTube. I went there to find out how to make a coffee liqueur. And all the recipes used instant coffee. And I'm like, there's no way I can use instant coffee. We got to use BIGGBY Coffee. Well, I cracked the code and I figured it out. And what we're going to do today is make a coffee liqueur. And we're going to do that by creating a coffee syrup and a rum infusion. And we're going to marry those together, and that'll be our coffee liqueur. So come along and enjoy the journey. To start the rum infusion, we're going to need first a ball jar. This is about 4 cups or 800 milliliters, and of course we're going to need some rum, and we're using a local rum from the New Holland Brewery. But our goal is to infuse this rum to give it a little bit of spice, and what we're going to do is get those things in this ball jar first. Now we want to choose flavors that are complementary to coffee, and so some of the first ingredients are going to be vanilla, and I'm just going to take a vanilla bean here, and it's a little tricky to give this a slice. I can get a little bit closer, and then we're going to peel it back and literally scrape the seeds out, and again scrape the seeds out. Those are pretty precious seeds. Then we're going to throw the whole thing in there. Let me get a few of these bits and pieces in there too. If you didn't have real vanilla bean, you could use some vanilla extract. I'd use about a tablespoon. Another flavor that's really complementary to coffee, I think we all know, is cocoa. And so I've got some organic cocoa nibs here, and those are going to go in. Another friendly flavor to coffee is cinnamon. Now we don't want that cinnamon to be poking through too strong. So I'm going to just say 1/4 of a stick of cinnamon and get that in there. We want some floral notes. So I'm going to use some golden raisins. If you didn't have golden, wanted to use dark raisins, you could do that. There's about 10 of those in there. And then I'm going to use a sliced apricot. This is really floral, and as you know, coffee has a lot of floral notes.
That's a dried apricot, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, dried apricot. Absolutely. Thanks for checking me on that. Now, the other thing that goes well with coffee is coffee, right? So we're just going to put a little bit of coffee into this jar too, but I'm going to use my mortar and pestle. I don't want it real fine, so I'm not using coffee grounds because, you know, later when we filter it, I don't want that to get all messy. I'm going to put some coffee in there. Another flavor that's really good with coffee, of course, is hazelnuts. We're going to get that in the mortar and pestle. About 10 peppercorns, about 3 allspice berries, and then I'm going to just shave or take a shaving of some nutmeg in here. Not a lot. Now you can tell this stuff is not an exact science, right? So you can decide what flavors you want in here to influence your rum infusion. But remember, it's going to go with coffee, and so we want flavors to be complementary to coffee. We're going to give this just a gentle breaking up, nothing too serious. We're not looking for fines. And And we're going to get that in. Not a very pretty process here. And the last thing, and often people don't think about this, but a real nice flavor for coffee is orange. And we're just going to take about a 1-inch strip of orange zest and put that in there. It's a rum infusion, so of course we got to get some rum in, and we're going to fill that up to the top line on our ball jar. And we're using an amber rum. It has a little bit more flavor than a white rum. And it's dark like coffee too, and that's good. Pop the lid on. We need to give that a vigorous shake. And then we're going to leave it on the counter for 24 hours. Well, it's been 24 hours, and it's time to strain our rum infusion, and it's time to make our coffee syrup. So let me start first with the strain on the rum infusion. And you know, I'm going to use a V60, it could be a Melita, it doesn't really matter, and a coffee filter. I'm going to use a white one so there's no flavor transfer. And it's a pretty simple process. We're going to try to strain out all the goodies that are in there. So don't shake it at this point, because we're trying to reduce the amount of particulates that go through. And you can see that pouring right through. Great. And you know, a coffee filter is just a great straining mechanism. And I'm just going to let that work off here to the side, and we'll come back to that later. All right, well, it's time to make our coffee syrup, and we have to make a syrup first, and then we're going to put some coffee in and extract that flavor. That's the whole idea. And what I have in this pot right here is some boiling water, and that's 750 milliliters of boiling water. And to that, I'm going to add 900 milliliters of sugar. Now, a simple syrup would be a 1-to-1 ratio, right? 750 milliliters of water to 750 milliliters of sugar. But I want this to be a little bit more syrupy than a simple sugar. So I'm using a little extra sugar. All right, so I'm just going to pour that all in. And if you want to come in and get a shot of this, you can see that initially the water's pretty cloudy. And our objective here is to dissolve all this sugar. So what we're going to do is bring this back up to a simmer here and look for the water to be clear again. Okay, while that's coming up to a simmer, we have to prepare some coffee. So let me do that. And I say we have to prepare some coffee. We have to prepare the coffee that's going to go in here. We're going to use Living Hope coffee today. It's one of our farm direct coffees, 900 milliliters. And this is a 12-ounce bag right here. And there's a little more than 900 milliliters in a 12-ounce bag of ground coffee. So we're just going to shake in most of it and then leave enough for a pot of coffee later. So let me put that to the side. Here's our 900 milliliters of coffee. Now, what would happen is if we put this coffee into our syrup right now, what would happen is this coffee would absorb about 400 milliliters of water out of here, and it would really reduce the volume. So what we have to do is pre-wet this coffee. Right now, we don't want to get to extraction. We don't want any water to be left on the bottom of the bowl, but I have about 400 milliliters of water here, and I'm going to just pour it on these grounds and give it a good stir. Right? I want these grounds to become saturated with water without going through an extraction process. Now this is cold water, because if it was hot, it would help the solids dissolve. We're not really interested in dissolving the solids at this point in time. What we're interested in is getting this coffee to have the consistency of wet sand. And let you get right in here again, and you can see that's wet sand without any water on the bottom, and that's kind of what we're looking for right there. And we'll just let that sit for a moment, give our syrup water a stir, and it's coming back to the simmer at this point. And we would want to let this go for about 2 minutes on a low simmer. I would keep stirring with a whisk. We don't want any crystals to get on the side of the pot. We want full dissolved sugar solids. Okay, we're back to the simmer, and it's time to add our coffee sand back in. And we're going to do that. And that makes a big goo. Well, it looks like almost like chocolate batter in some ways, right? But we're going to let that come right back to a low simmer again. And we're going to do that for not more than and not less than 4 minutes. You know, 4 minutes is really sort of a natural extraction time for most coffees. When we look at brew times for an automatic machine, often it's 4 to 5 minutes. If we look at a pour over, often it's 3 to 4 minutes. And that's the time that it takes hot water to dissolve the solids that are in a coffee bean and get it into the water. And that's what we're doing here too. It's a little more aggressive because we're on a light simmer. And so we want to keep it at that light simmer and never really get to a boil. We don't want over extraction. We just want a rich, bold coffee flavor. And by the way, that's one of the reasons why we chose Living Hope from Zambia and Ndola, one of our farm direct coffees. It has a really rich, bold, and dark flavor. It's kind of what we would expect out of a coffee liqueur. All right, 4 minutes have gone by. Not really, but we're saying 4 minutes have gone by. And what we need to do at the end of that 4 minutes is we need to remove these grounds from this liquid as quickly as possible. Otherwise, we'll have over extraction. So it's really a two-part filtration process. The first part is to get out the big grounds right away, right? And for that, I'm using a traditional kitchen sieve, and I've put in a little cheesecloth, and that's going to allow me to go ahead and just pour this right in. Wow. Looks like it could be messy, but that's going to strain through pretty quickly. You can see that. But what we're trying to do is arrest the extraction process and just pull out what is essentially the simple syrup with coffee flavor. All right. Now, we do have to have a second filtration. And again, we're going to use a ball jar just like we did with the rum infusion. We're going to use our V60. We're going to pop in a fresh filter, and we're going to take the coffee that went through the sieve and the cheesecloth and pour it right through a white filter straight into the ball jar. And here we're just trying to remove all what would be called the coffee fines. So we're trying to just get it down to a pure liquid. All right, it's going to take you a while to do this filtration. You can see it goes a little slow. So maybe it's time to brew that pot of coffee that you had left over in the Living Hope bag, sit back, turn on some music, and work the filtration through. The next step, of course, will be combining the two ingredients and bottling. All right, I've finished my pot of Living Hope coffee, and I'm done straining all of the coffee syrup, and we're ready to make our coffee liqueur. We have both of our ingredients, the rum infusion and the coffee syrup, and it's the blending of those two at 50-50 that will actually make the liqueur. Now we have an issue, and that is that we have a little bit more coffee syrup than we have rum infusion, and it needs to be a 50-50 blend because a liqueur is generally around 15 or 20% alcohol content by volume. Our rum right now is at 40%, so it's actually the blending of these at 50-50 that will get it down to the 20%. Our infusion's pretty strong, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create enough infusion so that there's an equal amount of the coffee syrup and the rum infusion. We have 800 mils each here. What I'm going to try to do is get another 400. So all I'm going to do is take a pitcher, take my infused rum, pour it in the pitcher, and it's quite strong, this infused rum, and you might actually call it a spiced rum. It's very similar. I'm going to try a little bit of it because, oh my gosh, that's really good. Because this is a great ingredient in its own right. I mean, you could pour this over a rocks glass filled with ice and sip it, and it would be just a great drink. So I got to add 400 mils of rum. We're going to use our amber rum that we were using earlier. And actually, I used the wrong measuring container, but that's okay. I can recover. This one only holds 250. So we'll get that up to 400. Perfect. We'll get it back. Let that join in with the other rum. And I don't know if you can notice the difference in color. You know, the amber rum here is quite a bit lighter than the infusion. The infusion has a really light brown color to it. The flavor profile of the infusion will hold even though we've added more rum to it. So that's okay. And we're going to fill our jars back up to the 800 mil mark. In this case, there we go. And in this one, it should come out pretty much to the 400 mil mark if I've measured everything correctly. And it has. Yay. All right. So now literally we have equal amounts of coffee syrup and rum infusion. All right. You know, I talked about this being a great ingredient by itself, but this one, the coffee syrup too, is really good all by itself. And you could use this coffee syrup with iced coffee in the summertime to sweeten if you wanted. You could use it to make a sweet foam. There's just so many things that you could do it. You could use it for baking, making a cake and that kind of thing. All right, well, we have equal parts coffee syrup and rum, 400 mils of each. And so in order to make the liqueur, as I mentioned before, it has to be a 50-50 mark. And so I'm just going to combine those two, and we'll combine the other two later. And I'll give it a little shake. And at this point, this needs to sit for about 7 days, right? So we have the rum infusion, we have the coffee syrup, but those two flavors, they have to marry together. And it takes about 7 days for them to fully marry together. We're not going to wait 7 days. We're going to go ahead and move to bottling right away. Now you could take this, and it is now officially coffee liqueur at 20%, and you could put it in an empty rum bottle, right? We used a rum bottle before, or if you wanted to gift it, you could put it in a little brown bottle like this. This is a 4-ounce brown bottle that I got off Amazon.com. If you were to use this, I'd want a little sanitization to go on. I mean, these are brand new. I'm not comfortable putting them in the dishwasher, but I'm pretty comfortable pouring in a little vodka and giving the jar a good shake all around, dumping that out, and now we're ready to fill. It's a 4-ounce bottle, so I'm going to measure off 4 ounces right here, so I don't have to do it by eye or by sight. You can see this has a syrupy quality to it, just like a liqueur should. And I can just pour that right in. Okay, so now we have a giftable item, a 4 ounces of coffee liqueur. What we've done, of course, is labeled ours up with 1 big gallon in space. We do identify that it's a coffee liqueur, and it has 20% alcohol by volume, and then we've sealed the top to boot. So at this point, I wouldn't give it away for another 7 days. I'd want this to marry in the bottle a little bit. For Michelle and I, we've decided to give this as a gift to celebrate Living Hope Coffee. And the reason we're celebrating Living Hope Coffee is because it's a farm direct coffee. And we're really excited about our farm direct relationships. Farm direct to us means that we're buying coffee directly from a farmer. We're eliminating all the brokers. We're buying from people that are treating the planet right. We're buying coffee from people that are treating the people right. And they always have some other strong social mission in their community, just like our local BIGGBY coffees do. Now, we made it with Living Hope. You could have made it with BIGGBY Best. You could have made it with French Rose. You could have made it with some other coffee that you'd like to make. I think the unique thing about this recipe is we're not using instant coffee. So many of the internet recipes use instant coffee. We're using real coffee and coffee that's meaningful to us. All right, I got to leave you with this one final note. When you love the world will love you right back. Hey, thanks for joining us. For future episodes, click the subscribe button. Bean Basics is brought to you by OneBigIslandInspace.com with 2 G's.